So I know I probably still get hate for this somehow, but in this video I just want to make sure I explain a couple of points since I already made videos about this topic before and I didn't address them very clearly. These are points I personally believe and I don't want to help spread some stuff I don't personally believe in, especially because I know there's a lot of like young impressionable people following all of this in the past couple of weeks, and this is like their first interaction with like the whole union stuff and work and stuff in general. So I don't want them going on with this like wrong idea of some stuff where they see it and it immediately raises red flags. I want them to be on the sides they are for the right reasons, if that makes sense. That's why I'm making this video. So obviously this is going to be about SAG-AFTRA. There's a lot of things going on with this and people are giving backlash to SAG-AFTRA for many things. Some of them they're very right to do so and we're going to talk about them much more in the video, and there are a lot of them, but some of them are not really points that they should be hated on. The main point of those is that non-union actors are not allowed to work on union projects. I do understand that at first glance this might seem just like as a monopoly, quote unquote, or just them like trying to take control and stuff like that, but please understand that this alone on itself for a union is not particularly a problem. There are other things that are added on top of that are problems, but this on itself is not a problem, and let me explain why. So obviously pretty quickly, the whole idea of unions is just that they're made to protect you from like corporations, big ones specifically, just enslaving you. Because you as a person, unfortunately, you don't have any leverage to negotiate or say no to anything basically against a big corporation because they can just fire you. Unfortunately, we're very replaceable, so you don't have any say. Theoretically, if a corporation that you work for, they'll be like, well, next month you're gonna work like 16 hours a day. You can say, no, this is ridiculous. And they can just be like, okay, well then we're just gonna fire you and they're gonna replace you with someone who's gonna do it because they need the money or whatever. So instead of you just stopping to work alone and saying no, if you're part of the union for that specific corporation, you have a whole lot of coworkers that are just gonna help you raising your voice. So instead of one person quitting and then the corporation being able to replace him, now you have the whole like 3,000 people working at the factory or the corporation or whatever just quitting. Obviously this is gonna stop the work of the business and it's gonna force them to come to negotiations with a fair standpoint. So in general, this is gonna help the workers. Now, after this happened in history, what corporations started doing to go around that is obviously just start hiring non-union members. It's like, okay, we have 3,000 people that are in a union working for us. So the next people we hire are just going to be non-union people. So let's say after like 3 years, now they have 5,000 people working for them, the 3,000 union people, and then another 2,000. So for whatever reason, if the 3,000 stop working, they have another 2,000 that can just manage and run the factory, for example. It's less efficient, but they won't be in like the deadly point they were in before where they cannot work. So their position is going to be much stronger, and within time they can just hire more and more non-union members and the union is not going to have much power at all. So to combat that, again, unions just start requiring the corporations that sign with them to just deny non-union members from working. If you're a non-union member and you want to work for that corporation, you need to join the union. So then the unions be like, okay, we have the talent, we have everything. For us to give you these people, you need to sign better working condition with them and stuff like that, at least theoretically. This is just a very normal practice for a lot of unions around the world, and it's kind of a necessary step for unions to get this power for them to negotiate. Without it, they're not going to have much more leverage than the normal person. So this is all I wanted to explain. Please, whenever you see another union in your working field, whatever in the future that requires people to join the union first before starting to work for a certain company, this does not necessarily mean they're bad. This is just normal union practice, at least for most unions. And it's a very common union tactic for them to gain more power, for them to negotiate for better working conditions. So please, let's stop the comments of like, oh, they're trying to stop non-union workers from working and stuff like that. This is kind of the point of a union in general. They do have huge problems, but there are other problems. This is not the point. I just wanted to make that clear. Now, moving on to the actual problems with SAG-AFTRA. These are the big problems, in my opinion, that people should be skeptical of SAG-AFTRA for. We're gonna list a couple big ones. The first one is that they usually lack a lot of transparency and honesty. There are a lot of documents and stuff about that there's just, it's a whole like chaos of them not being able to provide like the official documentation of some stuff or being able to like just tell the public what's actually going on. For example, they claimed the whole strike was like for AI, which obviously we all know that it was not right now, but they just did that to like portray the public, and that is just wrong. Also, with their own actors, they did sign an AI deal before, and not all the actors were consulted. And there's actually a big like split between the actors on that. A lot of them think that this is not a good move, and they still signed it with Replica Studios, even though a lot of actors don't think this is in their interest. So the union in general does have a lot of like non-transparency and sort of like some sort of hint of corruption, which is not good for a union that you'd want to represent you at all. So this is a huge problem with SAG-AFTRA. The second problem is that actors outside of the US definitely need different deals. So we all know that, it's obviously to join the union, you're going to gain some benefits, like say healthcare, AI protections, better working condition, better pay and stuff like that. And obviously for you to get them, it's a trade-off, so you need to pay something. This is how it works in unions. You need to pay like an entrance fee or a membership fee or whatever. For SAG-AFTRA, this is going to be a huge like $3,000 or $4,000 plus a percentage of your works, which is a lot. Now, if we look for US-based actors, this might make sense since they do provide you with like healthcare, AI protections, stuff like that. There's a lot of benefits you're going to gain from the union, theoretically at least. We're going to talk about that more a little bit if you join the union. But if Genshin becomes a union project, then people internationally will need to also join the union for them to work, at least after a certain period. But in general, they definitely will need to join the union, so they are forced to. Again, this is not particularly a problem for me, in my opinion, if the union were actually good for everyone in the world. But the thing is, the benefits you're getting from the union as an actor based in the US and as an actor from like the EU, for example, or Asia or like the UK or whatever, it's going to be very different. It's not fair for them to have the same contract because a lot of people in these countries already have good healthcare that they pay for from their taxes, by the way. They already have AI protections in their own respective countries, for example. They already have better working conditions in their own respective countries and stuff like that. So the benefits from them joining are going to be very limited. So it doesn't make sense for them to pay the same amounts as American actors. This is effectively just going to be the whole world basically subsidizing problems that only American actors have, which is just simply not fair in my opinion. So even though they might need to still pay a fee to join, obviously, because they still benefit from some stuff like better wages in general, better legal fees if something happens and stuff like that, but it definitely should be way less than US based actors. For example, it should be like a third of that or even less. Like for example, as an actor in Japan working for a company that's in China based in Singapore, why would I pay like $4,000 for an American union that justifies that by them providing healthcare or whatever? It just doesn't make any sense. So international actors need different contracts and less fee and everything. The third problem with SAG-AFTRA is going to be their ability to back their promises. All these promises that we've been talking about before, like the healthcare, the legal stuff, the stuff like that, it's very questionable whether SAG-AFTRA will actually give them to you, especially because they don't seem to abide by their own rules. For example, Genshin is not a union project, although they were allowing a lot of their actors to just normally work on it without any penalties and stuff like that. And with the whole like corruption stuff, with the whole non-transparency stuff that we talked about before, it's actually very questionable whether they're actually going to help you if you need it. Are they really going to give you lawyer fees, for example, if you want to have an AI legal case? Many stuff like that are going to be very unclear, and for people to just give them power and just trust their word for it is kind of meh. So yeah, this is a huge problem with SAG-AFTRA. The last big problem, and also kind of the biggest one in my opinion, is actor members' very unprofessional behavior towards non-union actors. Obviously, like we've seen from, Paimon's VA or Kaching's VA or many other like union actors, it was just harassment for a non-union VA who just took a job. And this is just wrong, obviously. Now, you might argue that these were just individuals and they don't represent the union, but we honestly didn't see enough from the union. It's not like they just made a hard line of being like, oh no, our community doesn't do that. We don't allow our members to attack other people and stuff like that. They just kept harassing them for 2 weeks and the union did basically nothing. There's some union members who expressed their concerns and stuff like that, but it just, on a union level, on the union itself, it was pretty much nothing. They didn't condone any of that. They didn't like punish them. They didn't do anything. They just allowed them to be. That just seems like a very toxic clique, and that just doesn't fit a union who's trying to, like protect everyone. Like you don't want to just give power to a clique like this to defend everyone's right and just trust them with it. So that's a huge problem with the union, and to this day they still didn't really put a hard line or address any of that, which in my opinion is the biggest problem. The whole like social aspect of the union seems like very toxic and unprofessional for me to be like, oh yeah, we should support them to fight for voice actors. And if they gain power, a lot of people, including me, don't believe it's going to be good in general for a lot of voice actors, especially non-US based, non-union actors. So the baseline of this video, what do we get of this? What I'm trying to tell you is that SAG-AFTRA is not good, not because they're trying to unionize Genshin, but because they're failing as a union to do some basic union stuff. And they also have a lot of shady practices, therefore no support from the community. Absolutely right. So unions are not bad. If another union, say for example, in the future will try to fight for voice actors' rights or unionize something or whatever, personally, I particularly will not care. I'm not saying I'm gonna support them because I'm not a voice actor and I don't really know much about that. This is a whole business side that I'm not really interested to get into. But the thing is, if another, say, union tries to rally voice actors in the future, we shouldn't be hating on them because SAG-AFTRA is a union, therefore any union for voice actors is just bad. No, it's not like this. The baseline is there's certain voice actors with a certain specific union that are just not good for the community, especially because of the unprofessional stuff. They've been harassing a lot of, people trying to work on the game. And as someone in the community who also plays this game, I will not support that. So that's why I think SAG-AFTRA is failing as a union who's supposed to, make a better community for voice actors and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you should hate all unions in general. That doesn't mean you should hate all voice actor unions, all Genshin Impact unions, whatever. It usually depends on the terms of the union, what people are making it, what are the terms, and many other things. All I wanted to say in this video.